Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in the winter wellness conversation. We're happy to have you. We think there's a lot of great information being shared today, and it's a great timely conversation. All of us, whether you have a young horse or an old horse, move into the winter season thinking about how we can do things better. If you're like me, fall also sometimes means colic season more than it does cozy books and staying indoors. And so we really want to get ahead of these things here and take the time to set up our horses with success. So joining me today, we have the FAR Equine Nutrition team and Makaila leading the helm. She's prepared a lot of great information. Also, you'll see Kirsten, my co-host and co-founder, is also here. And what we'll do is we will share a lot of great information. And if you have any questions too, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. We're always excited to be in these conversations. Makaila, maybe I'll hand the mic over to you. Feel free to introduce yourself and take it from there.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Makaila McLean. I'm an equine nutrition specialist and the founder of FAR Equine Nutrition. So tonight we'll be talking about winter horse care and nutrition. Every horse is different, so I'll be sharing guidelines that you can adapt to your horse's individual needs. If you'd like support on your own horse's diet, I'm always available to help build tailored plans. So we can start. We're going to cover why nutrition matters year round, how winter changes a horse's needs, practical feeding and management strategies, and special considerations for seniors, overweight, or hard keeping horses. All right, let's get this started. Okay. Okay. All right, so here is the first bit. So a little bit about me. FAR Equine is named after my three horses there, Fern, Archer, and Risk. I am an independent equine nutrition specialist, which means I'm not tied to any feed companies. My role is to help horse owners create balanced, science-based diets that fit their horse's needs, goals, and budget. So I'm currently getting my master's of equine science at the University of Edinburgh, um, specializing in nutrition. I have completed the nutrition portion of the program. I also have a bachelor's of science with honors from Athabasca. I have completed the equine nutrition advising course through Legacy Equine Nutrition, and I'm also in their advanced program. So I have a little bit about me. I have veterinary clinic experience as an assistant for about 5 years. I am an active dressage and 3-day event rider and competitor. And that's, I really have a passion, especially for performance horses as well. Being in in those disciplines, taking care of your horse properly is really, really important for their performance as well. So I'm really dedicated to educating horse owners on nutrition and its impact. I'm very science-based and research-driven, and I'm fully independent as well. So I don't product push. So yeah, and another, inspiration was my horse Fern about a couple years ago, colicked in the winter. And it really opened my eyes to how carefully we need to feed during the cold weather. And I'm sure a lot of us have had really similar experiences. Horses that struggle to keep weight, lose bloom or colic in the winter. A lot of it can, I mean, not every case, but a lot of it does lie in nutrition and management. Horses have really delicate digestive systems, and drastic changes can do more harm than good. Instead, diet should really be balanced, consistent, and adjusted gradually based on workload, metabolism, climate, and management. So, for example, if you have a horse living in a heated barn in the winter, maybe a lot of management wouldn't change, a lot of nutrition wouldn't change, like compared to a horse that's turned out without a blanket and in the elements. So we're going to move on here. So why does nutrition matter? Nutrition is not static. It evolves with horses' age, workload, health status, and weight goals. A well-balanced diet supports performance, longevity, and quality of life. So proper nutrition really impacts a lot of aspects. It impacts energy and stamina during work, muscle tone and top line, hoof and coat quality, immune resilience, even focus and behavior, metabolic status, and really importantly, gastrointestinal health. Forage forms the base of the diet, but it does not meet all the requirements on its own. Nutrient gaps, especially in protein, vitamins, and minerals, can appear even when a horse looks fine. Common signs of deficiencies are a dull coat, weak top line, recurrent illness or gastric upset, slow recovery or frequent injuries, and sometimes erratic energy. Balanced feeding does reduce the risk of ulcers, colic, and metabolic issues. So tonight I'll walk you through practical research-backed winter care strategies so we can keep your horses healthy, hydrated, and thriving this season. All right, so horses do have energy changes for the winter. So every horse has what's called a thermoneutral zone. This is a range of temperature where a horse can maintain its body temperature without any extra effort or energy. And then we get to every horse has a lower critical temperature, which I'll just call LCT from now on. This is the point where they are going to have to start using extra energy to stay warm. This The LCT is not the same for every horse. So, a fuzzy coated horse acclimated to Alberta winters could handle -15 no problem without expending extra energy. But let's say you took a clipped horse from Florida and stuck it in the Alberta weather, it's gonna have to use a lot more energy at -15. So it's gonna have a higher LCT. There are a lot of factors that can influence a horse's LCT: coat type and thickness, how used they are to their local climate, their body condition, environmental factors like wind, rain, or snow. So you can monitor your horses by observing their behavior. Are they shivering, huddling, or seeking shelter? Are you noticing changes in body condition as the weather drops? So understanding your horse's LCT really helps you make informed decisions about turnout, shelter, and feed. For examples, horses below their LCT may need extra forage for energy, or you may adjust their shelter setup to help them conserve heat. So speaking about shelter, shelter really does play a really critical role in energy conservation, as you can see in that picture there. Natural windbreaks like trees or hedges are useful, but research actually showed that a three-sided shelter could reduce heat loss by about 20%. So horses with limited shelter may need a little bit more forage to maintain their body condition. Planning for wind, precipitation, and snow is also important. It's not necessarily that you should stall your horse in the winter. It's just giving them options to protect themselves from the elements and to help conserve heat. Um, and horses do generate heat through hindgut fermentation. Horses are monogastric hindgut fermenters. So forage is the first tool to help them keep warm. All right, so next, another really important, oh, yeah.
Because you mentioned how them like huddling. And so it's interesting because even recently with the weather changes and like it's not particularly cold yet,
Hmm.
knowing that like our horses still kind of have that like summer coat, they haven't really grown, they're not very fuzzy yet. I've actually noticed like the horses like seeking the shelter way more than they did, in the summer. They're like huddling up, they're kind of getting all cuddly and stuff with
Yeah.
each other. So it's interesting because like I think, oh, that cold snap, I have to start thinking of that kind of stuff. But actually with the season change, now I'm like, oh, that's a good point because I'm seeing that and it's not that cold. Like, I mean, it's dropping to about like, 3 to 5 degrees, but they're just not prepped for it yet. Haven't had that time to grow that coat yet.
No, and especially when it's going from really warm during the day to just dropping at night. Like, I mean, I have one horse who's super, like, she grows a great coat. She's like a Canadian, and so, she's handling the drops pretty well. But I have an Arabian who just doesn't have that coat yet, and so he needs a little extra help at night when it really drops. So yeah, it's interesting for sure. Um, all right, so body condition scoring. So we generally use out here the Henneke system. It's a scale from 1 to 9, and it's objective assessment of adipose tissue, which is also just known as fat, in the key areas on the horse. So I starred the key areas there. The neck, just behind the shoulder, the ribs, about a third of the way down on the ribs, and then along the rump, and then the tail head. A score from 1 is like emaciated, and then 9 is obese. So a score from 1 to 3.5 is like danger, underweight, need to get that weight up. There's going to be a lot of health concerns with that. A score of 4 to 4.5 may have some health concerns. Not as dangerous, but it's definitely not ideal. We generally want to see the ideal between 5 and 6. So 5 to 6 is where we don't see the ribs, but you can easily feel them. 6.5 is like starting Some people do say 6.5 is within ideal. I do think that's starting to get into the overweight category because it's really easy to drop into the 7. So I like to stay within 5 to 6. Then again, 7 to 7.5 is a danger, overweight, metabolic concerns, joint problems, a lot of extra strain on those joints. And then 8 to 9 is danger, very obese. So we really, people kind of like their horses a little chunkier, but it does cause a lot more health problems than to see a little bit of rib. So it is really important to make sure your horse is within the ideal. A helpful hint too, again, as I said, the ribs, if you easily see ribs, that's an automatic score below 5. And then if they're really hard to feel, that's automatically overweight. And it's really important in the winter, take your blankets off. I would recommend minimum once a week. I think you should feel them under them every day. Really just check to make sure they're not overheating, and it's the appropriate blanket for the temperature. And take it off. And it's not about visual; it's about feeling where the fat pockets are. So, and especially with thick fur, it's going to be harder. So it's really important to feel and not just go by visual. Especially with their winter coats. This horse has a nice summer coat, so definitely really important to check for the winter.
And at each of those spots that you've started, are you trying to feel for like a bony prominence at each one of those areas?
So yeah, so the neck, if it's kind of like floppy like if it's floppy, it's crusty. It's called crusty neck. So that's where I'm looking to see, is it like kind of floppy and soft. The blue star behind the shoulder, and there's a fat pad there. So if there's not really much of a fat pad, that's probably ideal. And then the higher the score, it's going to be a significant fat pad. The ribs, I feel a third of the way down, and you just feel for fat coverage. The tail rump, that's a good point. If your hand is flat on the or on their rump, that's probably ideal. If your hand is cupped like this, that probably means their spine is sticking up and they're a little bit underweight or they need muscling. And if your hand is like this, that's fat on either side of the spine, so that's overweight. And then the tail head, you're feeling for little fat on either side of the tail, which you can see. If there's not really much, that's probably ideal. If it's really sunken in, that's underweight. And then, if it's really, really squishy, then you're overweight and that's some fatty pockets. So yeah, it's kind of the general feeling for it. All right, so another really important aspect is salt and electrolytes. So electrolytes are made up of sodium, chloride, and potassium. Salt is made up of sodium and chloride, so salt makes up 2 out of the 3 electrolytes just by giving salt. Hay does provide most, if not all, of their potassium requirements, but it doesn't contain any sodium. So that's why salt is needed. They can't get it through, hay or forage. So you can give block salt or loose salt. My personal recommendation and preference is to give loose. You can have a block out if they want, just to have extra. Loose, how much. It's more reliable. You know exactly how much they're getting every day. And they're getting that minimum 1 tablespoon instead of every day. You're like, well, I don't know how much they licked, or multiple horses on a lick. It's yeah, that's what I do prefer. So normally, everyday maintenance, I add 1 to 2 tablespoons. Increased work or cold snaps where you really want to encourage the drinking, I would recommend 2 to 3 tablespoons. So electrolytes, I would supplement on top of salt, so don't replace salt. You can supplement after, sweating, traveling, extreme weather, or to encourage drinking. Or if you have a really picky horse who just won't handle a lot of salt, you can give electrolytes. Another really important thing with electrolytes is there's a lot of products out there that actually don't contain a lot of electrolytes. So here are 2 labels that I have that are really good examples of what you want to look for. There's the salt, sodium, and chloride are the top ingredients. And then potassium is next. And then when horses sweat, a little bit of magnesium is released, but not enough that you need to supplement extra magnesium. But it is, some of these do just contain them. So yeah, these are 2 labels that are really good examples, and make sure there's not just a ton of added sugar as well. And some supplements, they say like they go in milligrams, so they're like, oh, there's 1,000 milligrams of sodium, but that's a gram, which is in the grand scheme of things nothing. Like 1 tablespoon contains almost 30 grams of sodium. So you really want to like make sure about that. Um, And then, speaking of salt, we can go into water because water is probably one of the most important things for the winter. Um, it is often called the forgotten nutrient because it's absolutely critical. Horses need about 20 to 55 liters of water a day, depending on their size, their workload, and their diet. So, another thing to keep in mind is that hay is very dry. It contains, most hay is around 8 to 10% moisture. Usually up to 15 is okay. So, when horses are in pasture during the spring and summer and fall, pasture contains about 60 to 80% water. And then they go into the winter going to hay, which contains a lot less moisture. So that means in the winter, when they're eating more hay, their water needs really go up. Dehydration is a really serious risk and can lead to impaction colic. So it's something we really need to watch for and really watch that our horses are properly drinking water. A few helpful tips. Some research studies showed that horses drank 40% more water when the water was warmed compared to near freezing. And the temperatures they liked the most and drank the most were between 7 and 18 degrees Celsius. So, you can use a de-icer or a water heater. Make sure the water's clean. Horses do drink more water when it's clean. And then if you're using a heater, just check for like the stray currents that can sometimes get into the water and discourage drinking. So basically, paying attention to water, how much, how clean, and what temperature is can make a really big difference in your horse's health. So, preparing for the winter. So, when it comes to preparing for changes in your horse's routine, planning ahead is really key. Keeping an eye on the forecasted temperature drops and anticipate any changes in workload. This helps adjust their care before any problems arise. When adjusting feed, remember that sudden changes can cause gastrointestinal upsets. So, small, steady changes are always better for your horse's system. Monitor closely by checking their body condition regularly. This way, if they're starting to lose weight, you can catch it early before, they're all ribby and skinny. And then if you're introducing new feeds like fiber-based mashes, do it gradually over several days before a cold snap. Make sure small, consistent adjustments do give your horse time to adapt. So those are just some helpful hints for preparing for the winter. And then in the winter, we do get cold snaps, especially up in the Okanagan. There's usually a few weeks where it's really, really cold. So, we really want to adjust things carefully. So, when the temperature drops sharply, horses experience a sudden spike in energy requirements. So, for every 1 degree below the LCT, that lower critical temperature, which is, that point where a horse has to expend extra energy to stay warm, their digestible energy needs increase by about 2.5%. So, on average, for a 500-kilo horse, this equates to roughly 2 mcals per day for every 10-degree drop in temperature. So, you're probably not following along. So, in practical terms, this means that during a cold snap, horses may require an additional 2 to 4 pounds of hay or its caloric equivalent daily to maintain weight and body temperature for those, big cold snaps. Horses without shelter, that are clipped, or individuals that struggle with, keeping warm and their thermal regulation will need more support. So increase forage gradually. So don't just, all of a sudden, give them 5 more pounds of hay, like look when there's going to be a cold snap and start adjusting, and then adjust gradually after to back down to their, what they were getting before the cold snap. Monitor body condition closely again. Cold snaps can contribute to weight loss, so it's really important to manage that, and ensure that the water remains available and palatable. Dehydration, causes colic risk. So below are some examples of some things that we can help. So we can also give mashes. I will talk about this in a couple slides, but fiber-based mashes are really good to, encourage water drinking as well because, it really soaks up the water. So again, leading with the ensuring that they're drinking enough water and the dehydration. Fiber mashes during cold snaps are, great ways to encourage more water. But again, do it gradually. Don't just give 5 pounds of cubes the day the cold snap happens. Really work up to that. So you can do hay pellets, hay cubes, beet pulp. is fiber, and then some products mix a couple fiber sources together, like the Purina super fiber there, and then the Nordic AutoFeed helps make adjustments easier. You can just increase their hay really easily without having to manually do it. And so this ensures horses receive consistent forage access even during the sudden weather shifts. And it streamlines management for all us horse owners out there.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've seen is that we kind of like see the forecast and we're like, okay, we're gonna up it by like 2 pounds of hay or 2 pounds. Like that's kind of how our system is set up, that we're not going like you said, just being like, oh, it's gonna be cold. Let's toss, half a bale more in there. That can be problematic. So we just do like small little increments and it seems to go really well. And then same on the backside, we don't go from like a big amount to back to normal. We even kind of walk it back a little bit. And I've seen the horses just adapting to it. There's no like stress behavior or kind of anxiety from the changes, even behaviorally. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. Yeah, basically horses just can't have sudden nutritional, changes is the big takeaway. Um, Speaking about that, we're going to talk about some myths and common mistakes that horse owners make in the winter. This is not a bash towards owners at all. We have all done this. These are just, what research is really showing us, and I really just want to my purpose is to educate, and it's my passion, and so educating is what I want to do. And yeah, so these are just some things to help horse owners make better decisions in the winter for their horses. So, bran mash. It's a tradition many of us have heard or fed. The truth is, bran is really high in phosphorus and very low in calcium, which creates an inverted calcium to phosphorus ratio. So we always want the calcium to phosphorus ratio to be minimum 1 to 1, ideally 2 to 1, if not higher. So then the bran mash really can invert it, especially if you aren't feeding a balanced diet, or you don't know that you're feeding a balanced diet. It can really lead to problems with bones, hooves, and overall health if not properly balanced. And not just that, even if you have a balanced diet and there's not going to be an inverted ratio, it's really low in fiber. So it actually really doesn't support the horse's digestive system the way that forages do. In fact, it can actually really increase gastrointestinal upset and really increase colic risk, is what research is showing. So if you want to feed a mash in the winter, better alternatives are, again, soaked fiber sources. So beet pulp, hay pellets, hay cubes. They're high in fiber, they add hydration, and they support the gut. It's a, and it contributes to a really well all around balanced diet. And then another common mistake is diet reset. So, a lot of people think taking their horse off regular feed and starting fresh in the winter, they're not working and it's colder out, they can just take their horse off everything. Is that horses actually don't need resets. What they need is balance and consistency with gradual adjustments based on workload, body condition, and the season. Even, if a horse is not in work, they still have minimum daily needs for protein, vitamins, and minerals. So, if their body condition score is increasing, they're gaining weight, it usually means that calories need to be lowered, not the nutrients. That's really important to think about. And another kind of common mistake is, in the winter, people think the horses need as unlimited hay as possible. And, again, the throwing like half a bale of hay. Um, and some horses do need more, like a lot of horses do need more hay. It's the foundation of the diet is forage. But for overweight and metabolic horses, they don't need unlimited hay in the winter. In fact, it can actually worsen weight problems and laminitis risk. So while the cold weather does increase calorie demands, horses that carry extra weight, it actually can be a really great weight loss opportunity. Keeping their feeding rate at around 1.5 to 2%, especially the really overweight horses, probably closer to 1.5. It allows them to, maintain a really healthy digestive system by having that, the maximum amount of hay that they can have for their weight, but also not giving them too much that they're gonna, maintain their weight. They can actually lose weight. It it allows them to use their energy to to create heat, and in turn burns the fat off a little bit. So it can be an opportunity. Just keeping the hay consistent and the same, we can just let winter do some of the work. And it can be a really safe and effective strategy. Again, every horse is different. Monitor very closely if you want to do this. But I think it's a really great opportunity, and it's what I recommend for overweight horses is to use the winter. So another, winter feeding consideration, especially for us in the Okanagan, a lot of us give our horses the winter off. Um, so even when horses aren't in work, they still have minimum nutrient requirements that need to be met daily. Um, this includes protein, vitamins, minerals. Their calorie needs may need to be lower, but we need to make practical adjustments to prevent overfeeding, but not underfeeding the nutrients. So, a couple examples: if your horse needs a performance feed for, training, you could either you could switch them to like a part performance feed, part ration balancer, which a ration balancer is just a really highly concentrated vitamin mineral supplement with a lot of added proteins, which are really good for horses in work and in the winter, and amino acids. So you could do part that or switch them fully to a ration balancer, and it's really low calorie as well. Or if you give a supplemental fat, like, rice bran or oil or a fat supplement, you could, take them off the fat supplement for the winter. So the goal is to, keep their body conditions the same. We don't want them fluctuating up and down dramatically, but just not overfeeding calories, but, still meeting those minimum nutrients for every day. All right, so senior horses in the winter, we all know that they can be a little difficult in the winter. Senior horses, they reach their senior status at different times. Every horse is different. Some remain strong and maintain good condition well into their 20s or even 30s, and others begin showing signs of aging much earlier. Personally, my mother-in-law's 31-year-old horse moved to my property, and she only started showing her senior signs in the last year, and when she was 30, which is just really insane to me. But and then other horses start showing senior status at 16, 17, 18. So every horse really really is different. So here's some like signs to watch for. And what happens with senior horses, what starts to happen like internally, is they have reduced gut efficiency. So they're not able to absorb nutrients and calories from long stem forage, which is hay, nearly as well. So, they could be receiving all the hay they need, all like free feed hay, but they're losing weight. That's a sign. Because they're not able to absorb those calories and those nutrients. Their immune system starts slowing down. They're a little bit more susceptible to illness and colic, possible low-grade inflammation kind of all over, which, can affect general health, kind of how they move. Even with a good diet, seniors may need adjustments to maintain condition and comfort. And, some may just even start like, losing that like coat shyness and just kind of start looking like they're not blooming and shining like they once did. Those are all signs that they have started to reach senior status. So we really, really have to pay attention to that, and we need to change their nutrition management to support them. So here are some 5 senior care tips. One, dental health is really important. Regular vet checks for teeth are really important so that they can, digest as much as possible and get those proper nutrients. It's important that you adapt forage for digestibility. So if they're receiving a lot of hay and they're starting to lose weight, they need to start going to short stem options like hay cubes or pellets or even beet pulp. Beet pulp can replace up to 50% of forage. Hay cubes and pellets can replace 100% if needed. So it's really important to ensure all their nutrient requirements are met so they're able to, if they have slower immune systems, they can, a balanced diet helps them, thrive as much as possible, even though their body is starting to reach that senior status. Another helpful hint is omega-3 supplements are really great. They can provide some anti-inflammatory support. There's plant-based and marine-based. Marine-based does show to have a more anti-inflammatory effect to help those horses. And then adjusting feed if extra calories are needed to maintain weight. Another one is supporting energy and comfort in the cold. So you might need to start considering blanketing or, blanketing a little bit more to help them conserve that heat so they're not expending, all this extra energy they need to like keep their weight on. And then also ensure they have proper shelter. So encourage eating and palatability. Another senior sign is they start to become pickier eaters. Their taste buds change and they diminish. So you might have to go through a few feeds to see which one your horse will eat. Um, Senior feed is designed for effective absorption of nutrients, especially from fiber sources and calories. So that's a really good option to go to. And monitoring body condition is really important. And you can even use like fenugreek is a really palatable feed enhancer to add to their feed. It just kind of makes everything taste better. So if they're really picky, that's an option.
I have a question about like hay cubes and pellets. Um, is it best practice or is it like only recommended to provide them soaked? I know like a couple people have like that I know have used like cubes and pellets and stuff like as a dry form as well. What do you guys recommend?
You can feed them dry. I recommend soaked just because you can add that hydration for those seniors as well. And then, especially seniors, they start to maybe their teeth and their stuff, it helps them just eat it a little bit better. You can try if they're eating the dry fine, like that's okay. But especially the pellets, I would really monitor for choke. They can they some are like, they won't get choke and they're fine. I prefer to err on the side of caution. But if someone says their horse has been eating it for years and has no problem, then that's totally fine. Like that's no problem. That's totally acceptable. I just prefer to soak it just to get a little bit of that hydration um, and help with their teeth a little bit. So yeah. All right. So, winter brings its own set of challenges, but it's a really great opportunity to actively support your horse's health and comfort. So, a few key takeaways: forage always comes first, it's the foundation of a healthy diet. Second, keep an eye on body condition and adjust feed as needed. Um, and remember, water and salt are just as critical as hay. Plan ahead for cold snaps and changes in workload, and don't forget to support seniors and overweight horses with tailored strategies. A key takeaway for senior horses as well is like they do require more individualized attention sometimes, and with the right adjustments, they can remain, comfortable, healthy, and active into their old age, and they can, have a really good quality of life. We just have to make really good tailored adjustments for them. Um, so even with these guidelines, it's really easy to overlook gaps or little mistakes that can affect your horse's health. There is a lot of misinformation out there, and some advice that people give doesn't always apply to every horse. So a little guidance really does go a long way. And like as an independent equine nutrition specialist, I really support all horses, not just the difficult cases. I really help by designing individualized feeding plans based on your horse's age, workload, environment. I adjust forage, supplements, and calories for seniors, hard keepers, or horses with special needs, easy keepers. And I really just want to provide practical, research-backed advice that works for your horse and for you. It's really important with horse owners with how they're able to manage. And I also offer support, as weather and work and body condition changes through the season. And so with the right plan and guidance, horses really can stay healthy and comfortable and thriving even through the coldest months. Um, so yeah, if you guys have if anyone has questions, here's how you can reach me. It's my email. I have a website as well. So yeah, that's
I think it's such a nice opportunity to be able to have equine nutritionists that can like look at what you're doing with your horse. And like, I know everyone's like, oh, I've done this, for 10 years and done it a certain way, but like there's always new science, there's always new technologies, there's new products that are coming down the line. Like even for me personally, we were just like, vet checking a horse. They're talking about like foresight and how this is like this new product that's come out and it's more of like a natural supplement and stuff. And I've had my horse on recovery for a long time. So they're like, yeah, like this looks actually like more the cartilage and all that kind of stuff too. So it's like always, being open to new science and new technology in that sense as well. I think is so important. So it's great to be able to have those equine nutritionists that like just out of school, they did the education for it, and we can really rely on that. So
Yeah, and part of getting my master's degree as well is I'm trained to critically evaluate, new research as well. So, how the research has been conducted, and and I can base my recommendations off current research as well. So that's kind of what I've been trained, is really to look at those scientific papers as well and do all the hard stuff.
And then, Makaila, how often would you recommend people do this kind of evaluation, like even with yourself? Like, do you find that people kind of come to you when things are kind of, off the rails a little bit with a laminated course? Or do you see people kind of coming to you more proactively? And when they do come, like, how often would you ideally see these sessions being valuable? Is it a seasonal thing? Is it a growth thing? Like for horses, like what would be ideal?
Honestly, I think the more I learn of nutrition and just the importance of how it affects so much, and there's research coming out, like so much new research about how it really affects so much more than we really think for horses. I think, I have a mix of, people being proactive and people coming to me, their horse has lost weight and they don't know what to do. I also have a lot of people who come to me because they're just, dumping everything left, right, and center into their horse's diet, and they're just feeling overwhelmed. Especially with the supplement industry, I am not anti-supplement, but it is unregulated, so there is a lot of, um, advertising and hopes and dreams out there, and owners want to do best for their horses, and they're just trying all these things and they just feel really overwhelmed, and what I really like to do is I love to streamline diets. How simple can we get this for your horse's needs and make it balanced and work for the owner? I think every horse could benefit from this. I have seen, some horses, that may look fine. We get them on a 30-day program, and after the 30 days, the horse, trims up, gains muscle, and the horse is actually performing better. That they didn't think that would happen. That wasn't in their mind when they were doing nutrition. They were they're pleasantly surprised that their horse is able to go longer and is more focused. So I think that's a hard question. I think, every horse could benefit, but the horses I really think benefit are performance seniors. Are a lot of seniors, really start to need a lot of extra help. And medical conditions, so metabolic, muscle stuff, any other stuff, those ones are really should be on a really research-based kind of program. So I do monthly programs, and I can do continuation. So, if a performance horse is, training 6 days a week and then they're off for the winter, I'm able to kind of, tweak their diet for the owner and just adjust it according to the season as well. So horses don't usually stay on the same diet year round. It's not always the best to stay on the same diet year round, especially for performance horses and stuff. So yeah, I kind of answered the question.
No, absolutely. I think it's just so customized. I think it does, it's very seasonal and it's very like what your horse is sharing with you in terms of, like how they're feeling, how they're looking, how they're, responding. There's so much to it. And I think it's really such a great time, the conversations for everyone. So yeah, thank you again for taking the time to share all this with us. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to happy, healthy horses for years to come.